All right, good morning. We are on Zayin Amud Aleph 47a. Should, of course, note, I'm sure we're all aware, today is the 7th of Adar, right? And the 7th of Adar, the Gemara tells us, is both the birthday and the day of passing of Moshe Rabbeinu. There's a beautiful Rashi on that Gemara. It's not the Gemara here, it's the Gemara in Megillah. The Gemara says there that Haman cast lots and chose Adar as the day for destruction because he knew the day that Moshe passed. And the Gemara says he knew that Moshe passed, but didn't know that Moshe was born. Now Rashi explains, what does this mean, didn't know Moshe Rabbeinu was born? And more to the point, how does birth help? Birth precedes death. Person's born, then death cancels what birth did. So Rashi writes, there's different variations to the Rashi, but Rashi essentially writes, Kadaya Leda Sheyechaper Lamisa. The birth is worthy that it atones for death. Birth atones for death. Atonement usually comes after a problem. But here, the birth comes before. What does this mean? So the Rebbe explains, based on Chassidus, that when a Jew lives a life that to begin with is a life of the spirit, lives a spiritual life, then death is only an issue for the physical material body. The spiritual lives, right? The soul has stages, doesn't have life for death, it has stages. The soul is there before it comes into a body, during the body, and after the body, right? So if a person during his lifetime lived to begin with a life of the spirit, then his birth atones for his death. Because even if the body disappears, but because his life, his birth was of a spiritual nature, then that itself atones for death, because it keeps on going even after he passes. And that's how Haman was missing. Haman just was thinking like a materialistic person. He's alive, he's dead, now it's over. But he doesn't understand that for a Jew and for Moshe Rabbeinu, the death lives longer than the life lives longer than the death. The birth lives longer than the death. The birth atones for the death. So the person's life that he lives is a matter of spirit, lives on, and here we are sitting by a table learning Moshe Rabbeinu's ideas. That's not something that Haman can grasp coming from his materialistic perspective.
It's also Esther's.
It's a very powerful day. Sorry?
I think it's also Esther's death, no? Today?
Esther?
Yeah.
Maybe.
It's in Hanukkah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll take your word for it, both of you. I don't know.
Crowned.
She was crowned when? 7th of Adar?
No.
7th day of Hanukkah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
My wife's birthday.
Oh, that's what you're.
Yeah.
Okay.
Crowned.
Okay. So we left off yesterday with the Gemara that told us that one should have the left hand push away, that is discipline, the boundaries, and the right hand, mekareves, the right hand bring close. Even as a person sets boundaries and pushes away, one has to leave an opening to allow to re-embrace and to bring back. Unlike two great leaders who failed to do so at a critical time. The first is Elisha, who pushed away his student Gehazi and didn't let him come back. And the second is Yeshua ben Prachya, who pushed away one of his students, what the Gemara identifies as, or the other version of the Gemara identifies him as Yeshu of Nazareth, pushed him away and didn't let him come back. So the Gemara begins with the story of Elisha and Gehazi. So yesterday we went through the chapter in Scripture that tells us the story. It's in Kings 2, chapter 5. And the story very briefly is that there is a general from Aram who seeks the help of Elisha the prophet because he's suffering from tzarat. He's suffering from leprosy. Elisha heals him. And when he does, this general Naaman wants to pay Elisha for his services, and Elisha says, I'm not taking a penny from you. Gehazi, the student of Elisha, runs after Naaman and says, no, my master just told me to come here and tell you that there's a student that needs some money. Give me something. And he gives him 2 bars of silver and clothing. And Elisha reprimands Gehazi, as he can prophetically see, that Gehazi went and took the money that he expressly said not to take. So he's cast away. And he curses him and tells him that the tsaras that I healed Naaman from is going to be stuck to you and your generations to come. Yeah, that's where we left. That's the story. So now let's see the Gemara's commentary on that. So it's the first line that's widest. In the middle it says, Elisha Mahi. The first line that's widest, that gets wide, right in the middle, Elisha. Elisha Mahi. What's the story with Elisha who pushed away Gehazi with 2 hands and didn't let him come back? The verse reads, Vayomer Naaman, and Naaman being the general from Aram, he tells Gehazi, the student who comes running after him, after he's been sent off by Elisha, who says, I'm not taking any money from you. Gehazi runs after him. He pokes his head out of his chariot, and Naaman tells him, Hoyel, please go ahead. Kach kikorim, take these talents of silver. Now, the Ksiv, it says later, when Gehazi comes back to Elisha and tries to hide what he did, and Elisha tells Gehazi, Loi libi halach, did my heart not go along? In other words, do I not have prophetic vision to see? Kasher hafach ish me'al markaftoi, when the man turned his head from his chariot, the kroscha toward you. Ha'es lakachas es hakesef, is it time to take silver? Lakachas begadim, and to take clothing, the zaysim and olive, the kramim and vineyards, vitzoin ubakar vavadim, and sheep and cattle and servants, veshvaches and maidservants. So this is the verses where Naaman Elisha pushes away Gehazi, tells him off for taking the money from Naaman. So before the Gemara gets to the story of Gehazi trying to come back and Elisha not letting him, or not exactly like that, as we'll see. But before we get to the incident where there's no returning for Gehazi, the Gemara interjects and comments on these very words. The Gemara asks, Umishuk shakal kulahai? Did he take that much? Elisha tells off Gehazi for taking 8 things: silver, clothing, olives, vineyards, sheep, cattle, slaves, and maidservants. That's 8 things that Elisha tells him. Why are you taking all this stuff? But if you go back to the verse where Naaman actually gives Gehazi anything, kesef begadim, silver and clothing. It doesn't tell him to take so much. Kesef begadim udishakel, silver and clothing is what he took. So what's the meaning of Elisha telling him 8 things? Rabbi Yitzchak says, Ba'osei Shah, at that time, when Gehazi entered back into the room, and Elisha could sense that Gehazi took money from Naaman, at that moment, Elisha was studying the laws of Shmoina Shratzim. The laws of Shmoina Shratzim are 8 creepy crawlies, 8 animals that crawl on the ground, identified by the Torah as being impure. Many of them we don't know what they are, but that's the Torah identifies 8 crawling animals that are impure at the highest level. Mm-hmm. So he was studying these laws. So Omar Loi, Elisha is telling his student Gehazi, Rasha, you wicked one, has it come the time to take the reward for studying the laws of Shemona Shratzim? The study of Torah and the study that we're learning right now, which is the Shemona Shratzim, the laws of the 8 impure crawling animals, the time to take the reward for that is in the world to come. And here you are taking silver and clothing as a reward for our learning. What a foolish idea. Mm-hmm. And that's why he says, why are you taking 8 things? Not because he actually took 8 things, but because he's taking reward for the learning of the 8 things.
Oh,
He was learning with him.
Elisha seems like he was learning with all of his students, and Gehazi
Oh,
is
so that's one of the
one of his students, if not one of his closest students,
And
it
he
seems
was
like.
stealing.
And he went, they took this money from Naaman. So Elisha was telling him, why are you taking the reward for our learning now? Leave that for the world to come. And that's why he says, list 8 things. Not because he actually took 8 things from Naaman, because he was taking reward for the learning of 8 things in this physical world.
He was stealing from Naaman, not from Elisha.
No, well, Naaman promised to pay Elisha. Elisha turned it down. So Gehazi went after him and said, oh, my teacher changed his mind. We want a little bit.
Okay.
So he went and took that money.
and it's sort of saying like how much more so you shouldn't take it because learning this law, these laws, for teaching that the reward comes from
It doesn't
this
say.
law teach about.
Okay, that's the question. That's what I was going to address. What's the uniqueness of this law? Could have been any other law in Torah.
Right, that's what I was.
Yeah. So on the surface level, they just happen to be learning these laws.
Right.
Yeah. But what's interesting though is on the surface level, they happen to be learning these laws.
Right.
And he comes in, and if we're telling him off for taking the reward in this world for Torah learning, and it happens to be the learning the laws of the 8.
Right. He mentioned specifically these laws.
So obviously there's got to be some deeper connection.
Right.
Moreover, from the fact that Elisha suspects Gehazi, what's the problem, Gehazi? Why are you taking reward for our learning in this world? That means when Gehazi went and took that silver and clothing, what was his intent? To take reward for his learning in this world. That's the implication. From the fact that Elisha tells him off for assuming he's going to take reward in this world, we understand what Gehazi was thinking. Right? Well, what's that about? Well, what's Gehazi thinking? Swindling his way into getting clothing out of, or silver out of Naaman is somehow a reward? What's Gehazi thinking? It's such a strange thing, right? So perhaps something like this, and this will explain all of this on a spiritual level. The Shemona Shratzim, the 8 crawling animals, yeah, they are the embodiment of the kind of negativity in this world that cannot be transformed. But you have certain things in this world that can be transformed, most things, and then there's things that cannot be transformed. This glass is not holy when I bought it. But with God's help, I make a bracha on this with my coffee, and I'm drinking it with the intent that this is going to keep me focused as I give a shir Gemara. So now it's elevated, right? And the same thing is true of this laptop, of this table, and our clothing we're wearing, and the food we're eating. So most of the things in this world, if they're kosher by Torah law, kosher means that it's available for you to elevate. Not kosher means it's not available for you to elevate. Right? So Naaman, coming from Aram, what does he represent? Is he the kind of thing that could be elevated or not to be elevated? So Elisha, it seems like a gray area. Elisha heals him from his saras, implying that there's some elevation. But then Elisha says, I'm not taking anything from you. So no elevation for you, even though I'm healing you. And I'm going to use this for the Jewish people because I'm going to use this as leverage. When I need your help, I'm going to use it as leverage. But taking money from you and elevating what you have, not doing that. But Gehazi says, wait a second, we can elevate in this world. Let me go back and take some of his money and silver and clothing and use it for the students of Elisha. Won't that elevate it? To which Elisha says, you're making a mistake. We're learning the laws of the 8 creepy crawlies. There's no elevation in this world. In the next world, we can elevate. We elevate through the study of learning, through the study of Torah, but not by actually taking that stuff. One of the ways that, sorry?
In that context, you can't elevate that aspect. Aspects.
Exactly. Don't touch.
Aspects.
Not in this world. That's right.
Oh, not in this world.
In the next world, we can elevate. Specifically, we can elevate through learning. One of the ways in which we elevate complete and absolute negativity, which we cannot engage, so it's a non-kosher. We cannot elevate non-kosher food. We're not allowed to eat it. But when we learn the laws of non-kosher food, that itself elevates the non-kosher food. So Elisha is telling Gehazi, the elevation we're going to do of Naaman is not by taking his stuff. We cannot do that. That's from the world of the 8 creepy crawlies. We can elevate it by learning about it. So taking it, that was a big mistake. Learning, that's what we're supposed to be doing. That's where we're going to elevate that level of negativity, by learning about it, not by actually physically engaging with it. So that was your mistake, Gehazi. That's perhaps how this all ties in, why they're learning these things, what Gehazi was thinking, and why Elisha tells him off. Right? Because there's a very big danger in, it's a danger in general. There's like a line that has to be straddled. You want to elevate the world, right? But you don't want to become part of the world and become part of the problem. So you have to know your boundaries is where you go and where you don't go. So you're supposed to elevate the world, yeah? So what am I supposed to do now? Walk into a club where people are behaving in the most abhorrent manner and say, give a speech about Torah because I need to elevate? It doesn't belong walking in certain places. What about elevating the world? You elevate the world, but you don't go into certain places.
Basically telling him, like, we just studied this, that you can't elevate.
Exactly. Now you're trying to elevate that. Exactly. What are you doing? Come here and learn with us. That's how you're going to elevate, because we don't belong there. We don't belong taking that kind of thing. There's certain things we take and there's certain things we don't take. It's all for the sake of elevation, yes, but there's certain places we don't go. And the elevation of these negatives come from learning.
Certain wards, right? You're allowed to take the spoils, but some you're not. Like an apostate city.
That's correct.
Burned to the ground.
You don't elevate that.
Take anything.
That's correct. That's correct.
Some you can.
That's correct. Yeah. It's interesting. I'm thinking about this because this past year, Yud Shvat, the 10th of Shvat, right, the day that the Rebbe became Rebbe, there's like this custom amongst Hasidim to learn discourses that were delivered on that day related to a 20-year cycle of learning. So one of this year's teachings was on this concept, that certain parts of the world are not to be elevated by engaging, but elevated by learning about it. You don't elevate Avodah Zarah by going to the idol worship and going to elevate them. But when you learn the laws of idol worship, that's how you elevate them. Right? So we don't elevate the 8 negative things by going there and eating eating one of these creepy crawlers and elevate, using that energy to learn. Oh, I'm elevating it.
Right. King Saul made this mistake. King Saul brought back spoils.
That's correct. He made the mistake. You bring it from Amalek. That's right. Certain things got to be eradicated, including Amalek. That's right. That's correct. He thought he was elevating Amalek by saving the animals and bringing it as a carbon. Big mistake. That's correct. And it seems like a similar mistake here. And that's why that's perhaps the symbolism of them learning these 8 things. Elisha saying, we're dealing with the 8 creepy crawlies. We're dealing with the lowest levels of klipa. We don't elevate. You do that by sitting here and learning with us, not by going and taking anything. Not the time to be taking things from them. The world to come, when Mashiach comes, yes, then there's elevation even of the lowest realms. That's when the pasuk says, God removes impurity from this world, then there's elevation. But now we learn about it. We don't go and engage that kind of thing. And that's perhaps what's happening here, which is connected to the tzaras. Because what's the consequence of the tzaras? For as long as he has that on his body, he's got to be outside the camp. You can't be elevated in that state. You have to cut it out, and then you can come back. Like the Egla Rufa. Which brings us back to the idea of the Egla Rufa. There's the klipa, give it its due, and stay away. You're outside of the city. You're in a place that's never grown. You're by a river that's never going to be, nothing's ever going to produce out of that thing. Or for the back of the head, not from the front of the head, because there's no elevation there. You cut it out and leave it there. That's the tzaras. You go out of the city. Once it's gone, and you come back. That's the 8 creepy crawlies. We're not elevating that. And this is perhaps the mistake of Gehazi, thinking he's going to elevate that by taking that stuff from him. To which Elisha says, big mistake. Okay. The pasuk continues. So if you look at the wider set of lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5th line. The pasuk stated, Elisha tells Gehazi, the tzaras Naaman, and the leprosy of Naaman, Tidbabach, will be connected to you, Uvezarach, and your children, Olam, forever. As the verse reads, Varba Anashim, this is a verse in the 2 chapters later, in chapter 7. Varba Anashim Hayim Mitzrayim, and there were 4 people who were lepers, who had the tzaras. Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, Gehazi Shleishes Banav, the 4 people referenced here who had tzaras are Gehazi and his 3 children. And perhaps this is connected, this idea that the danger of engaging that which is not to be elevated is that You don't end up
Go down
elevating
to
it.
their
You get
level.
stuck in their level,
Mm.
right? If you go to a place you're not supposed to, your intention was to elevate it, but in the end is you end up becoming part of the problem. You get stuck in that place instead of elevating it. Okay. Now, a chapter later, in chapter 8, right? The story was in chapter 5. That was a story of Elisha and Naaman and Gehazi. That was chapter 5. In chapter 6, we just read, I'm looking on the side. Sorry, chapter 7, we just read that there was 4 people who were tsaras, and that was Gehazi and his children. In chapter 8, the verse reads as follows. Vayelech Elisha Damasek. Eliezer went to Damasek. Damasek is Damascus. Damascus. So the pasuk says he went to Damascus. Says the Gemara, Lama halach. Why did he go to Damascus? Rabbi Yochanan explains, Shahalach lachzira leGehazi b'tshuva. Rabbi Yochanan says that Elisha went to go try to bring Gehazi back to do teshuvah. V'loy chazer, but Gehazi would not come back. He would not do teshuvah. Amar loy. So Elisha told his student Gehazi, this is all the Gemara's commentary. Chazar bach, return from what you've done. Do teshuvah. I'm here to re-embrace you. Amar loy. So Gehazi says to Elisha, Kach mikublani mimach. This is what I learned from you. Kol mi shechata, anyone who sins, v'hichti esarabim, and causes the masses to sin, ein maspikim biyodeh lasses tshuva, is not granted the opportunity to do teshuvah. So I'm sorry, by your rules, I can't come back. So here's the very interesting thing.
This is interesting.
Why is it interesting, new?
Because he's adding a new element here, right?
Which is?
Which is causing other people.
Okay, there's that. The Gemara is going to explain that in a moment, what he did to cause others to sin. But there's another interesting element that they're going to say. What do you have the Gemara start this whole teaching? The Gemara says, don't be like Elisha, who pushed away with 2 hands. Make sure you're pushing away with 1 hand and bringing him close to another. But here we see Elisha trying to bring him back.
Yeah, that's true.
Which means it was too late. So what the Gemara means then, don't push away with 2 hands, doesn't just mean push away and then come back later and bring him back. But while you're pushing him away, make sure you bring him back. Because if you push him away with 2 hands, even if you come later and say, hey, come back, it's too late.
It's the boundary.
Sorry?
It's a very fine boundary.
It's a very fine boundary, but you're talking about like students, like you have a teacher that, really rips it into a kid. And then when the kid grows up, teacher comes to him and says, you were a little kid, I was doing it through a hard time, come. And the kid's going to drop it all and say, oh yeah, you traumatized me, but I'm fine, I'm coming right back. It's not going to happen.
You have to push with love.
Exactly. While the pushing is happening, it's got to be love, not just later. I'm pushing now, and later I'm going to show you love. Too late, buddy. So, and the same thing's about the.
It's not really an issue of time frame. It's more like how you pushed away.
It's correct. The same time of the pushing.
Same time.
That's correct.
Just how you did it.
And the same thing's going to be in the next
does
story.
Does it leave an opening
That's right.
for return, or does it not?
The same story is going to be with Rabbi Shua and Pracha, the next story, where he's also going to try to bring him back. And his students, Yeshu, his students can say, I'm sorry, too late, I'm not coming back. Even though he tries to bring him back. Because at the time of the pushing, he didn't have an opening. And we're going to see even more details there in the Bishub and Pracha's story.
Rabbi Samuel Cohen, I don't know if you know him, he says you always have to do it like a sandwich. So you start with a compliment, and then criticize, and then finish with a compliment. So you're always...
Right.
Like being heroes.
Yeah.
That was presented.
The other people first, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true, brother, not just in education, but it's also true in like interpersonal relationships.
Yeah.
If you if you accuse someone without giving any like opening in your accusation for the person to escape the accusation, and you push the person into the corner where the person has to double down and say, no, I'm not. Like, this is a public relations example. If you call out a politician publicly as an anti-Semite, what's the politician going to do?
No.
Oh, you're right. Yes, I was an anti-Semitic. I'm changing now. Never happens. What does a politician do? Double down and says, no, I wasn't an anti-Semitic. What I meant was, and really it's not true. You're the anti-Semite. You're the hater.
How do you approach?
Because you pushed him into a corner.
How do you approach someone?
So the best case, I don't know. I don't have the answer. And there's got to be some sort of backdoor channel that changes that. Actually, I'll give you an example here in Montreal. There was a politician in Pointe Claire was accused behind closed doors of being an anti-Semite. So Jeremy Levy, the mayor of Hampstead, he's an Orthodox Jew who davens every Shabbos, called him up and asked him what happened. And the guy was like, almost like, he's feeling bad on the phone. He's a friendly Jewish politician calling me saying, I never such a thing. I don't know what happened. Jeremy spoke to him behind closed doors to get a feel for what he is. And then Jeremy came out publicly and said, I spoke to him. It's not true. The whole thing is made up. He's not an anti-Semite.
Wow.
So as a Jewish politician, he behind the closed doors gave him an out and was able to save a bad public relations, forcing this guy into a corner of being an anti-Semite. And now the accusers became the idiots. So I don't know if this works on every time, but as a rule, it's what happens when you push with two hands. You don't give a way for the person to get out. Now you got the guy stuck in a corner. What is he going to do? He's going to double down, right? It's with children, with everybody.
It's your wife.
You're always just to say you accuse your wife and you don't have any out for her. She's going to double down. You're going to push back even harder.
And then a little criticism. And finish with a compliment. You might get lucky.
And then you pray.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. So what's the story with him, with Gehazi causing others to sin, right? Because this is what Gehazi tells Elisha. I'm not coming back because you told us that if you cause others to sin, no hope. Even though, by the way, the statement is not that there's no teshuvah. The statement is he's not granted opportunity to do teshuvah. Ein maspikim biyad l'aseh teshuvah. This is something that Rambam makes very clear, that ein l'chadavar b'nei teshuvah. Nothing stands in the way of teshuvah, no matter how bad the person gets. It's just a question of whether you're going to be granted opportunity to do so or not. But anybody can do teshuvah always.
I think we learned that there were certain individuals that are not given that opportunity.
We did learn that. But even they could have done teshuvah. There's no such thing as not doing teshuvah. It's just a question of whether the doors are going to be wide open or you have to pry the doors open. But the teshuvah is always there. Yeah. Okay, so my avad, what did he do? What did Gehazi do that's being referenced here that he caused others to sin? So two versions to the story. Ikadamri, there are those who say, Evan Shayeves. Evan Shayeves translates as a stone that draws or pulls. What would that be?
Wait, what?
A stone that pulls. Magnet.
Yeah,
A magnet.
Ah, that's not it.
Yeah. Evan Shayeves, a stone that pulls. A magnet. Talaloi lechatos Yeravam. He put he helped Yeravam. Yeravam is one of the kings of one of the corrupt kings of Israel. One of the majorly corrupt kings of Israel. So he had an idol of some sort, and they used magnetic pull to V'amida ben Shemayim v'aretz, and they made the idol be suspended in between heaven and earth. And it was just enough magnetic pull to keep it floating in the air.
Mhm.
Or if you have
There's two magnets.
or if you have two, as I say, if you have two magnets and you put it in the middle, and you can have it suspending in the middle. So people watching this saw, wow, miraculous. And this caused others to sin in a massive way. So that's one version of what Gehazi did to cause others to sin. He helped Yeravam set this stage looking like some sort of magical experience. And the Ikadamri, others say, an even greater corruption. Sham chakak la apume. Shem chakak la apume. He took the name of God and engraved it on the mouth of the calf, the idol calf that Yeravam made. So Gehazi is a student of Elisha, one of his prodigal students, and thus knows he's what's called the Bnei Nevi'im, right? There were schools of prophets. Not all of them made it to be prophets of a leading level, but they were schools of prophets, and they had obviously spiritual capacities and levels and understanding. So Gehazi is such a student, knew the name of Hashem on a very high level, and thus engraved that on the mouth of the calf, and therefore the calf would speak. The voice would come out of the calf and would say, Anochi b'lo would say the first two commandments of the 10 commandments, which is, I am God your Lord, have no other gods before me. And therefore, it appears to those watching that the calf is saying, I am God your Lord. This is an even deeper level of corruption. He's taking the divine energy and taking it to the lowest place, which flows with the ideas mentioned above. Gehazi trying to take the lowest places and elevate it, but actually getting stuck there, taking his energy, taking his learning on lofty spiritual divine levels and bringing it to the lowest place, causing idol worship. And finally, Likad Amri, others say, Docha Mikame, Rabbanan Docha Mikame. Gehazi pushed people away from learning from Elisha. He was Elisha's prodigal student, and as such, he had like this. He had the power to either let people in to learn by Elisha or not. And Gehazi would push people away. Tiksiv, as the verse reads, in the next chapter, right after the story of Gehazi and Naaman. So right after Gehazi is pushed away, the next verse, the very first verse of chapter 6, reads, Vayomer bnei Nevim Elisha, and the sons of the prophets, meaning the school of prophets, told Elisha, behold, the place that we are sitting, before you, tsar mimenu, it's packed, it's tight, there's no place. So if right after the story of Gehazi leaving, the students tell Elisha, the place is packed, we can't sit here, it's too tight. Michlal, the implication is, the Ada Idna, that until this point, it wasn't so stuffy. Because Gehazi didn't let them in. And as soon as Gehazi was kicked out of the group, everybody else was let in. And because they were let in, the place was packed. So this is the third variation of what Gehazi did to cause others to sin by not letting people come learn from Elisha. So these are the three versions. It'd be interesting to see like some sort of underlying connection between all these three stories. One, he helped Yeravam with these magnetic stones, suspending his idol in the air, causing this magical experience. Two, he took the name of Hashem, engraved it on the calf, and thus the calf says, I'm God your Lord. And number three, he didn't let people come in to learn from Elisha. This is the story of Gehazi.
Those things were not the reason why Elisha pushed him away. It was for the money, right?
It's because of the money issue.
But
That's a good point.
Was the one who raised his own issue against himself.
By saying, I can't come back. I'm too late.
He knew he did these things, but those weren't the reasons by which Elisha.
Yeah. So two comments on that.
Apparently.
That's a good point. Yeah. There's two comments on that. And maybe to the point of Elisha pushing away with two hands, and this idea that Gehazi himself is saying the reasons why I can't come back. It's almost like you, my teacher, labeled me as a bad person. If you label me as a bad person, I'm going to accept that I'm a bad person. Then it's over. And maybe that's the idea of not pushing with two hands. If you criticize, but don't label him a bad person. Once you label your student a bad person, he can't unlabel himself. And even when you come back and say, hey, you're good, come back. He says, no, I'm not good. You labeled me a bad person. And that's what he tells him. I learned from you that when you cause others to sin, I'm out. So Gehazi himself repeats back to Elisha what he said about him. You labeled me bad. You labeled me bad, I'm out. I'm not coming back. Maybe that's something on that point. But another point I was thinking, I thought, I don't have any answer to. I'm just pointing out that it would seem like the first two versions the first two versions are that he helped Yeravam with the idol. One is that he helped him suspend in the air, and one is that he wrote the name of Hashem. I imagine those two events would have happened after Gehazi was kicked out.
Oh.
After he's kicked out, then he would go off to Yeravam and start helping with the idol.
Further decline.
Which is much worse than what he did earlier while he was still a student of Gehazi, causing other people to not come to come learn. So that, and all these, like you pointed out, these things didn't get him kicked out. What got him kicked out was the misappropriation of taking money from Naaman when he wasn't supposed to. But why he's not coming back is these events. And it would seem like two of these versions would have happened later.
Further decline.
But whereas the other one has to have happened before. The third version must have happened before, where he's holding people coming back from Gehazi. Because the verse is, after Gehazi kicked out, now the place is packed.
Right.
Which means his holding back students from joining would have happened before he was kicked out. Whereas the other two events presumably happened after he's kicked out. So that's something else to think about.
I guess it just goes to show you how important studying Torah is. If all three of these are put together, how do you compare
that's right,
idol worshiping to just stopping people from studying Torah?
Right.
You know?
Or perhaps that's what it is. If you're stopping people from getting spiritual enlightenment in Torah, they're going to go somewhere else for spiritual enlightenment. If you don't make it available,
You would think in today's world, though, somebody who doesn't study Torah, okay, he doesn't study Torah.
Yeah.
It's not like going to put God's name on a.
Right. But if you want to be more like what's the word? Take poetic license. You could say if you don't give the kid spiritual
Yeah.
meaning and sustenance,
He's gonna
substance
go to the other.
in Judaism, he'll find it.
Somewhere else.
He'll find it in other
He's gonna
gods,
see it all
either
together.
literally in India, or he'll fill up that empty hole with another idol that they give out in Hollywood. It's also a golden calf they give out in Hollywood.
That's true.
They give out little golden idols that everybody worships.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of idols in the world.
Crazy to see it together.
Yep. So that is a good point, in that the pushing away of learning Torah is equated with attracting people to idol worship. And maybe that's the answer. If you don't fill up, there's people who are thirsty. Kids are thirsty. They're coming to Alicia. They want to learn. They want to get inspired. They want to get uplifted. And if you don't grant them that, they're going to go to the other place and they're going to see magical experiences that are so attractive. Golden calves floating in the air. Who doesn't want that?
Maybe
Very powerful.
Maybe the stealing of these monies was just the tipping point for Alicia. Okay.
Right.
Because he knew of the people not being
Yep.
able to study.
That's a good point. That's right. If you go with the third version,
It's a
that the
tipping
story
point,
happened
like
earlier.
the kids with the bears. You make an assessment of everything in totality.
Right.
There's nothing redeemable about it.
Right.
Kids are their generation.
That's a good point.
They're also
Whereas
innocent.
Alicia knew he was doing earlier,
Right.
but that didn't make him kick him out.
No.
Only once he took the money from Gay Cousin, he said, okay,
That's it.
till now I thought you were a purist. You want to make sure we had the best students. Now I just see you're in it for yourself. Out. Maybe something like that. I don't know. Very powerful. Tomorrow, God willing, the story of Yeshua ben Prachia and what's identified here as Yeshu of Nazareth. Also a very fascinating story.
Thank you for sending me the.
Yeah. So I have to point out about that video that I sent. I mentioned yesterday this Gemara. We learned it once a couple of years back in Sanhedrin. It's the same Gemara. So over there, I gave a whole explanation about how the Yeshu of Nazareth here may not be the actual JC. The fact, the math, the chronology that I gave in that video, indicating that this person wouldn't have been JC, is only based on their dates of where they put JC. Based on where they put JC in history, as in after the destruction of the temple, then it couldn't have been the same person, because the person here, Yeshua ben Prachia, is way before the temple is destroyed, and therefore couldn't have been the same person. That's only if we're going to follow their chronology.
No, but in our chronology,
It's possible that we believe JC existed before the temple was destroyed. And if that's the chronology, then this is JC. But if we're going to go with their, in other words, it's really a criticism of Christians who pointed at Jews and said, you guys talk terribly about our God, as in the story.
Mhm.
The response would be, well, if this is your God and your God has lived after the temple, this isn't the same guy. But it's very possible that the chronology that they're presenting of JC is not correct. And this is actually JC, depending on where you put him, historically speaking, post-temple or pre-temple. Because the Romans occupied Israel before temple also, and they were putting people on crosses before temple was destroyed also.
but in our thing, we don't acknowledge it. This is just a story about another.
So here it describes, it's not so simple because we self-censored. We took words out so that the Christians wouldn't kill us for it. So according to some old manuscripts, the story we're going to say tomorrow is Yeshu of Nazareth, which, unless there's some other Yeshu, which, as I mentioned yesterday, Yeshu stands for Yamach Shemoy V'Zichrei. So it could be a different person who also happened to be from Nazareth, who also happened to be popular and cause other people to leave Judaism. It would be
Fair enough.
so. It's not so simple, and I'm not 100% clear on this. Okay, wonderful day, Yidden.
Thank you.
Thank you.